juvenile justice system. We must be willing to rethink what we know about the school to prison pipeline. We must be willing to rethink what we know about giving every single child in our country a chance, not to just survive, but to thrive. That is what we are challenged to do. That is what today's discussion will be the beginning of. And at the end of the road, I'm convinced we can make a difference in the lives of the young people of this great city and of the city as a whole. Our kids depend on it. And I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Chief of Police Troy Briggs.
Good afternoon. Just quickly, I'll be back in a little bit with a presentation, but I do want to let you know how we came to this point today. And I want to thank Dr. Farabee and David Rosenberg from IPS. We met with the PACER organization a few months ago and had a conversation about some of the issues that are going on with our young people. And Dr. Farabee and his staff had a great idea of us coming together to work in partnership. And I can tell you, I've been in a lot of cities. I've never seen a superintendent who's been so in tune with what's going on with the staff, what is going on with the students, and working directly with the police department. So Dr. Farabee, thank you for that. And these things don't happen without community support. And I think that says a lot about what our young people are going to be helped in the future, because so many people have come together to make this happen today. And I certainly want to thank CICF for their donations, the Lilly Foundation, Public Safety Foundation of Indianapolis, and also the Pacers Foundation for making this happen today, or we would not be able to sit here and talk about some of the issues that our young people are facing. At the end of this event today, we'll have some questions, so if you have questions, write them out on a little form, and you can pass those forward, or as you can tell, I think on the screen, there may be in a little while, you can tweet to hashtag Public Safety Forum, and we'll collect those questions and answer those at the end of today's gathering. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lillard Richardson from IUPUI that helped make this day possible. Thank you, Dr. Richardson.
Hi. On behalf of the Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs, which we call SPIA, and the Institute of Public Policy at IU also, I would like to thank our program partners and supporters for making today's forum possible. Many of those were up here on the screen, though Courtney may be changing it at the moment. and Chief Briggs just mentioned a lot of those. SPIA and the Public Policy Institute are grateful for ongoing and long-term community partnerships where our faculty, staff, and students collaborate with public, private, and community organizations to affect positive change. Whether it's through national public safety forums like this one today, or through our data-driven projects in partnership with the city and Indianapolis nonprofits, SPIA and the Public Policy Institute are deeply honored to contribute to these efforts to help address our region's greatest concerns and to see our city and state thrive. At SPIA, we say our students major in making a difference. Our faculty and staff work tirelessly to help prepare future leaders in the fields of criminal justice, public safety, public affairs, and nonprofit management who will help address the issues we face today and those that we face tomorrow. And I might mention, as I look around, I see several alums and I see several potential future alums. We do have a Master's of Criminal Justice. You don't need a GRE to get in. You can take it online. It is part-time. Just want to mention. Lots of potential alums out there. So, okay. That was off script. So, sorry, Katie, I went off script there. As an example of our commitment to our students and community, I'm pleased that two of our graduating seniors helped check you in today, and one of them will also be speaking later today. And we have a few of them in the audience. I'd also like to mention that we're going to have a student participating in the discussion later about youth and violence. Finally, I would like to thank Mayor Hogsett, Chief Riggs, Indiana Pacers Sports and Entertainment, including Rick Fusen, along with the Pacers Foundation, also Pacers Vice President and Trustee, Mr. Jim Morris, our IU trustee, also Dr. Farabee, and Indy Public Safety Executive Director Dave Nutty, Central Indiana Community Foundation, Eli Lilly and Company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Real quick, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Fusion. He's the president and COO of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, and we'd like to publicly thank him for hosting us today. Mr. Fusion.
Thank you all for letting us speak for a minute. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your words. You were eloquent about our situation, and we all have a responsibility to help our children. I'm a proud graduate of IPS schools, School 71, number 106 in Arlington High School. I was just talking to our longtime Arlington alum, Chris Reeder, and I said, I don't remember when I was in IPS the situation being where I was scared, or that I was hungry, or that I had any fear for my family, or as I walked in back and forth from school. My brothers and sisters who all are IPS alums had the same feeling. My 3 older children who have gone to school in Indianapolis, I don't believe they've experienced that. But in my household now, I'm fortunate to have 2 younger biracial stepchildren who I'm more concerned for. And I'm so very grateful from a personal standpoint that you all come together in this collaborative effort to try to help all of our young kids, and my kids as well. So I can't thank you enough. We at the Pacers have really 2 major things that we talk about every day, and that's winning championships and serving community. We were a little bit short getting there last week, and the good thing about being on a 2-team team is the fact that red is good this week. It wasn't good last week. But we will continue to strive on behalf of Herb Simon, our owner, and our Vice Chair, Jim Morris. We talk about serving community every day. Through our foundation, we've given about $5 million over the last 10 years to underserved youth. That's our mission. To many groups maybe in the room. We give tickets to try to help kids get out of the neighborhoods at times for both the Fever and the Pacers. And we're very committed to the youth and to your service. And we couldn't be more happy that you're here today in a good team effort and a good collaborative effort like we want to have on our court all the time. So I thank you for taking your time in this beautiful Indiana afternoon to help the kids and to help our city. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Fusion. Joining me at the podium will be Dr. Louis Farabee, the Superintendent of the Indianapolis Public Schools.
Just in case you missed it, Mr. Fusion said he was a proud graduate of Indianapolis Public Schools. It is an honor to be with you today, and I want to start also by going off script. The educators are ones that tend to do that, Dr. Richardson, but I just want to say how grateful we are for the Pacers organization for hosting us today, and whether it's been Rick or Mr. Morris, since I've been in Indianapolis, the superintendent of IPS, whatever the organization can do to be supportive, they've been very supportive of IPS. I just want to say publicly, thank you to the organization, been great for IPS. Also to Mayor Hogsett, in his 4 months in term, everything I asked, he said yes. Let's do it. and so I'm just grateful to have his leadership, his presence today. He's not only here today, but he's in our schools constantly and quietly and checking to ensure that young people in Indianapolis get the great education that they deserve and need. For me personally, we started this conversation after I received an email on a Sunday evening and Monday morning regarding a student that was brutally murdered over the weekend. And we had conversation with our commissioners, as we always do when these things occur. And it really dawned on me and our board that we had become numb to this reporting that we receive often over the weekend on Mondays. And we decided that we needed to generate and facilitate more conversation around solutions. Because what we found is there were a lot of individuals pointing fingers about what the problems are, but what collective conversations are what the solutions would be. And I also found that there were individuals in our community that were doing great things, what I call random acts of improvement. And while noble intentions they are, we believe it's now time for a collaborative effort around addressing the issues of violence in our youth. I firmly believe that there's a symbiotic relationship between what happens in our schools and what happens in our neighborhood and community. And oftentimes what we would see happening in the weekend would transfer to things that were happening in the school throughout the week. And so I'm really pleased that we're at a point now that we're having this conversation in the collaborative spirit around creating solutions. And I firmly agree with the mayor that there's enough expertise, resource, and knowledge in this room to create solutions around the challenges we have. And it's ironic that we have this meeting and this summit today when I got one of those emails again over the weekend, that we had a 10-year-old student who shot himself in the alley over the weekend. And began to ask myself, how did this young person, how did this 10-year-old have access to a firearm? Why was he unsupervised? Why did this occur? And so hopefully today, again, we'll have an opportunity to generate conversations and also solutions. And again, I'm really proud to have all the partners that we have in the room, CICF, IMPD, Lilly, everyone that's represented today, to begin to put our thoughts and ideas and resources together to ensure that we not only address what's happening in our schools, but what's happening in our community. I'll stop there because you have an opportunity to hear from me as a panelist, but I do want you to hear additional perspective from our staff, get an opportunity to hear from the student today. I'm now going to turn it over to our athletic director, Jamal Smith. He's an athletic director, but he's much more for the district, and he's going to provide additional perspective around IPS in our community. But again, it's a pleasure to be here today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, want to say thanks to Mayor Hogstead, Chief Riggs, Dr. Richardson, Spear, of course, Mr. Fusen, and the Pacers. Certainly appreciate you guys hosting, and thanks again to Dr. Fairby for kind of spearheading this and pulling me into it. I come from a unique perspective, I think, a little biased, former athlete, former coach, all in the inner city. Originally from Dayton, Ohio, the west side of it, a place called Drexel. I'm an 80s baby. I grew up when the crack cocaine epidemic was at its height. Single parent household, raised by his mother, yada, yada, yada. What's interesting for me is when I meet folks now, anyone who's, I guess, Google or read my bio would never really connect that dot for me. But that's why there's a passion and a connection for me to athletics. It was, interestingly enough, you have all these odd memories from your childhood. And for me, very close to my grandmother. I was one of 57 grandbabies when she passed, God rest her soul. But the first to graduate from high school, let alone the first to go to college. But one of the things I remember her saying, it was an argument between her and my mother. Unfortunately, there was a spirit and culture amongst the family. Not everybody worked. Most of my aunts and uncles were on social welfare. My mother, it just peeved her.
So without even a GED at the time, my mother worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs, which, for lack of a better phrase, really pissed my grandmother off. And so she would say to my mom, she would say, you're leaving these boys alone too much. And whether you realize it or not, somebody's going to influence them. It's up to you to dictate who that somebody's going to be. So my mother was at a crossroads. Because to her, what she communicated to me at a later date, that one of the reasons that she went to work and worked 2 and 3 jobs and inevitably made just $26 more than she would have had she stayed at home, was that the message from her to her boys was much bigger than that $26. She would say, Jamal, it's important to me that you see somebody get up and go to work every day. But she was sensitive to the fact that she was leaving her boys at home by themselves. So she established a rule. Actually, she established a whole bunch of rules in the house. She kind of ruled with an iron fist, right? But one of those rules was that every season we had to play something. Every season. Now she would say, I'm not going to pick it. You can pick whatever you want. But there are those 2 rules. 1, you must pick something. And then 2, whatever you pick, you're stuck, buddy. That's what you're playing. So if you inevitably pick football and you found out midway through the season that you suck, you're just going to be sucking all season long because you're stuck playing football. And I often tell this story. I give a speech called The Power of Expectation, and I talk about how within the context of that rule, one year, I went out for track. And pardon me if you've heard me tell this story before, but I stayed after school for track one day, man, and you get out, for any of us who's run track before, you get out to the track, and the track coach says, all right, we're going to start off, we're going to run 4 800s, 8 400s, 10 200s, 5 100s, and we're going to finish with a mile. I said, I quit. And I packed my bag, and see, we didn't have a car. My mother rode the bus everywhere she went. So I hitched a ride with the first person I saw going in my direction. Now, I took for granted the fact that my mother was working 2 and 3 jobs, so usually at 3 or 4 o'clock, my mother wasn't home. But, God works in mysterious ways, man. I walk in the house, I walk into the house this day, and she's staring me in the face. And the first thing she says to me is, what the hell are you doing home? So I won't bore you with the details, but she made me pack my stuff up. And we literally walked all the way back to the track. By the time we got there, track practice was over. The track coach was packing his things up, and he said, excuse me, sir. She said, excuse me, sir. You the track coach? He said, yes, ma'am. He said, this is my knucklehead son, Jamal. And he's supposed to be on your track team. He got the bright idea that skipping out on practice was a good idea, and I'm here to tell you that it's not. And so if it's all the same to you, whatever it was that you had everybody do today, he's to do right now. And he did. So I had to run 8 400s, or 4 800s, 8 400s, 10 200s, and yada, yada, yada. And then walk all the way back home. And she sat and watched me do all of it, knowing that she had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning the next morning. So she inevitably beat me across the head and shoulders the whole way back home. My point is, there's a power in sport. The interesting part for me is that through that all, I feel blessed to be standing here amongst you guys today. Not without fault, not without mistake. We've all fallen short of the glory. But I'm here standing, and I've made more good decisions than I have bad. And I credit that to 3 things. 1 is my faith and belief in God. 2 was the structure and discipline of my mother. And 3, inevitably, was my involvement in sport. I truly believe that the more of our young people, and I think it's a simple math equation, the more of our young people who are involved in the productive, positive, physical, and extracurricular activity, the less will be involved in questionable activity. But it's incumbent upon us to make that available. Make it mean something. So I created a nonprofit called the Lead Change Project. And we piloted it at Arsenal Tech High School about 5 years ago. The interesting part there is when we got over to Arsenal Tech, we had the first day of tryouts. And I want to say we had 13 total kids that showed up that first day. Took a baseline after we fielded a good team. We took a baseline and the GPA hovered somewhere north of 1.5 for the program. And we started to implement a few things. One, we had all the kids sign contracts that stipulated a few things, right? There's the academic expectation, power of expectation. One of my pet peeves is when folks, because of the situation someone is going through, they lower the bar as if they're doing them a favor. That's one of the beautiful things I loved about my mother. She would say our circumstance will not dictate where we're going. So my rules won't bend and my expectations don't lower just because we live in the neighborhood we live in. She would say, C's will get you punched, D's will get you beat, F's will get you killed. The second thing, of course, was the on the court piece. Be respectful to your teammates, respectful to your coaches. Third, we had a community service aspect. We expected and demanded that the kids participate in community service. We would typically do 3 per year. Of course, we as the coaches would put them together, but it was their job to show up and be there, participate in the community service. That proved to be invaluable. Taught a few lessons. One, simply put, no matter how bad you feel that your situation is, you don't have to go too far to find somebody who's got it a lot worse than you, right? The other piece is this spirit of giving back. It's understanding that this thing called life is a lot more important and it's bigger than just you. It's not about you. And it's easy, and we all do it, no matter where you come from or how much money you make. Everyone goes through the turbulent times, and it's easy when you're going through your storm to feel like you're the only one dealing with it, right? You're the only one going through this piece. The outlet is looking someone else in the eye who's dealing with something either the same or far worse than you're dealing with. It allows you to take a deep breath and you go, you know what? Storms are temporary and pain won't last always. The other thing that we did was we monitored social media. And here's where parental engagement came in, because we would keep track of, Facebooks and Twitters and things that like it. We noticed that when we would, bring a kid in for some questionable activity on social media, that, there were a couple times when they were engaging in an activity with their folks. And so we would pull the parents in, because the contract not only needed to be signed by the young people, but it needed to be signed by their parents too. And the message to them was, if in fact you can look at me and say, your interest is that of the best interest for your child, then you can't deny that this behavior will jeopardize their ability to get where we all want them to go. And if you're in fact on this team, then I need you to switch that behavior. And it was interesting how what we thought were common sense wasn't necessarily, as my grandmother would say, common sense ain't common for everybody, right? Anyway, fast forward a few years later, we had an cumulative team GPA of a 3.2 for the boys. We had 11 seniors that year. All 11 of our seniors graduated. 10 of the 11 went on to school. I think one kid decided to go to the military. And the icing on the cake was that we won the state championship. Round of applause. So I come here to you today, with you today, and applaud you guys being here. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination is sports the magic staples button, right, to cure all ills. But I do believe that it is a support mechanism. It is an avenue by which young people can engage. And stats when you can look up all kinds of research that talks about how when kids are engaged, they perform better academically. The GPAs are higher. They're less likely to drop out and more likely to graduate. Attendance is better. Discipline issues decrease. They're also better physically fit. Confidence rises. There's a study that I read that said 95% of the country's Fortune 500 companies all participated in athletics, and 90+% of all hiring execs said that giving apples to apples, they would hire someone who had played a sport than someone who did not. So the benefits are undeniable. And there's an opportunity there, without recreating the wheel and creating some new program, to engage. One of the issues that we face in IPS is the national average for kids that participate just on the high school level was 55%. Just over half the kids in high school participate in something. In IPS, that hovers around 21, 22%, just in high school. So currently, that translates to roughly 35 to 4,000 kids that just go home every day at 2:45, which is why it's so important, as our mayor mentioned, that as we get ready to let out for what's going to be a magnificent summer, that we figure out ways to engage our children, our young people, in some productive activity. So I look forward to the conversation this afternoon. I look forward to learning. I'm a sponge. I like to soak it up. And there's a ton of people in this room a heck of a lot smarter than me. So thank you again for your time. I look forward to everybody's input. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was very powerful. I'd like to welcome Chief Riggs back up for a quick presentation on the data that IMPD is seeing with our youth.
All right, before I begin, just let me say that some of the things we're going to talk about are pretty troublesome. But as has been said before, I want to echo that I think the answer to some of these issues are in the room today. The first thing I really want to... Is it going to work, Rick? I'll try something else. Hit the enter button. Yeah, it's, I did. Here we go. All right, we're back. Thank you all. You know who that is. Here we go. These are three issues that we know are an issue in Indianapolis. And Indianapolis is not unusual. Every major city in America is dealing with these same issues. Increase in victimization of violence, mental health issues, and a high prevalence of youth poverty and hunger. It is a growing problem. It's not going to go away anytime soon. When you look at the Marion County Community Health Assessment, I want to thank Dr. Kane. She couldn't be here today, but she's really done some good work, and we have collaborated on many things, and we will continue to do this in the past. But I want you to look at the high rates of violence and homicide deaths in this city. In Indianapolis, firearm homicides for 10 to 19-year-olds were double the average of the 50 largest U.S. metropolitan areas. If you look at the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the United States of America right now, homicides are up in 28 to 30 of those so far this year. There was an average of 15% increase in homicides last year in the top 50 cities in America. And many of them were young people. And if you look at this, our African American youth are 13 times more likely to die by homicide than their white counterparts in school. Here's something that should trouble all of us. When I've spoken to a lot of you that work the streets of Indianapolis and helping young people, you say there's far too many young people carrying a weapon. When this survey was taken, it was basically saying, in the last 30 days, have you carried a gun, knife, or other weapon? And 17% said yes. Now that's in 2011. We believe those numbers have probably increased since then. And then you can see that almost 4% agreed that they had carried a weapon on the school property. This is something we're seeing in all segments of our community. 30 to 40% of the people that are arrested by IMPD suffer from some sort of mental illness or depression. And look at our young people. We are double the national average of young people facing depression. And suicide is the 5th leading cause of death in Marion County. This has hit all segments of our population. It has hit some very good friends of ours and their family of an 18-year-old that took her life, and it's something that we have to be aware of. And I will say part of the issue here, and we as parents, as educators, as a police, sometimes miss this. And that's when you see a child that's depressed or a child that's having a bad day and they're not eating, it's time to talk to that child. It's time to find out. And what we're finding out is that a lot of time they're being harassed. They're being harassed at school, they're being harassed on social media, and it has some devastating effects. In this city, I can tell you not too long ago, we had 3 young ladies shot over Facebook postings. Those are the issues that we're seeing and leading to serious levels of depression. The mayor's already mentioned this, 1 in 3 Marion County children living in households with incomes below the federal poverty line. Those numbers speak for themselves. Food insecurity is a real issue in our city. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Also, I'll say there's a lot of numbers here, and what we will do is we will make this available to you if you want these numbers, and also tell you where the source information is if you want to dive a little deeper on this. So we met with a lot of young people. I'm so grateful to have Dr. Hampton here, the deputy mayor, because he had a community conversation at his church. And it was the same night, I believe, Dr. Hampton, he had a youth meeting going on. So there's a few hundred young people. And the young people, as the proceeding continued, started to opened up in small tables, opened up to the congregation as a whole. And all that information was sent to us to look at. And here's what they told us. These are teenagers in Indianapolis. No one loves me. No one cares about my future. I'm hungry when school is not in session, and I'm concerned about my interactions with the police department. Think about that. These are teenagers in our great city. These are the issues they're facing. I don't know about you, but regardless of I'm chief of police or a citizen of this great city, this troubles me. It troubles me to think that a young teenager in the prime of their life should be enjoying life. One of the first things they tell us is that no one loves them. No one cares about them. And then when we heard that they were hungry when school wasn't in session, that's a concern as well. So we need to keep that in mind as we continue to have conversations. Then we also met with single moms. We did an informal survey within the police department. We looked at a group of homicides that we had had. We looked at the suspects and we looked at the victims. You know what we found out in that small, and it's not a scientific study, but in that small group of 70 individuals, our detectives could not tell us of one suspect or victim that came from a 2-family home. Could not tell us of one suspect or victim that had a good family nucleus, a grandparent or someone taking care of them. That should be troublesome to us. But here's what they also told us, that when their children are younger, they do a good job of keeping them on the right path. But when they hit those teenage years, that's when they start losing control of them. And the young mothers that we met, most of them had children between the age of 1 and 3 years of age, and some of them were as young as 16 years of age. And this is a tough conversation to have, and I hope I can just speak honestly. But about 20 to 30% of those young mothers said that they had decided to have a child after they were sexually assaulted. They thought they had a moral responsibility to have that child. That's a pretty big decision for anyone to make, especially when you're 16, 15, or 14 years of age. Here's what I talked about, the increase in juvenile violence. We set some records last year that weren't good records. 14 of our suspects in homicides were 17 and under in age. We arrested, I believe, right around 95 people, and 14 of them were 17 and under. These are murderers in our community. 11 of the murder victims were under the age of 18, 17 and under. The good news is, this year that's trending down. We hope that it remains that way, but we've had, I believe, 1 murder victim under 18 and no suspects at this time. Hopefully that does not change over the next few months. So I put this in here, one, because we have educators, and this is where I first learned this was in school. And this is important to me in law enforcement. It's important to any of us that wear a uniform here in service. This is the basis of our republic. We forget that sometimes. But if you look at this, it says that we're endowed with certain inalienable rights, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this republic is all about ensuring that all of our citizens have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's our responsibility as citizens. I thought of this declaration when I sat in the East Room of the White House and President Obama was talking about many of the issues through My Brother's Keeper initiative that young people are facing. And he was very clear. And I'm not going to be as eloquent as he was that day, but I will sum it up this way. When he spoke about young people, and he said, if families aren't stepping up to help young people, it's an incumbent upon us, the adults in our communities, to fill that void. That's our responsibility as Americans. It's our responsibility to help them have those same rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've just seen those numbers. Do we really believe that every child in the community that we live today understands these rights or actually have these rights in today's America? I don't think so. And going back to what President Obama said, that it's incumbent upon us to do something about that. And I'm grateful for you to be here, because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be here. These are some pretty startling numbers. Here's the good news. It's not all bad news. Here's the good news. Plenty of people have stepped up and already been engaged, have already decided to help. You may have seen that we've had some issues with our PAL organization, where it's just running out of money. Well, we have stepped up as a city and said we're going to continue the PAL program and we're going to expand it. We've met with Reverend Green and talked about an OK program and expanding services to young people. We're going to get that done and completed as a police department. We are going to work very hard in partnership. We're doing juvenile justice jeopardy to teach individuals, young people, how the police operate and why they operate in a certain way. Along those lines, the Bloom Project, where we're bringing young individuals from school that will sit and talk about the issues that we're facing, that they're facing, and what the police department can do and how we operate as a police department. Chess Club program, summer jobs program, continue to raise money. The mayor's been very committed to providing summer jobs. We know that when a young person has a summer job, they have a little money in their pocket, they can go on a date, they can go shopping, they can go buy themselves something. We also know that some of these young people take that money home and buy food for their family. But we also have seen in those areas there's a vibrant summer jobs program. Those crimes that are usually committed by young people that gets them in trouble drop dramatically if they have other opportunities. And I put this in closing, thinking back to the Declaration of Independence. Will we really know our full potential as a city and a nation until all of our youth have that right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Will we really know our full potential? It's a little different for a police department to be focused on this. I realize this. But the reason that I wanted to come back as police chief was I'm excited about hearing what Mayor Hogsett was talking about and understanding that we're not just going to focus on short-term issues, we're going to focus on long-term issues. Because I'm going to tell you right now, we're seeing a lot of violence in our city. We're continuing to deal with that violence. The mayor and I talk constantly. The staff and I are working hard to try to make sure that all of our department understands that. But we can have 5,000 police officers, and most of the shootings we've had over the last 2 weeks, 5,000 officers couldn't do anything about it because it's a fight over a cell phone. It's a fight over a Facebook posting. It's a fight over a joint. It's a fight over a few dollars. It's inside a home. It's inside a community center. Those are issues that we're dealing with, and not till we start providing some opportunities and holding the right people accountable. I will give you my word as chief. We will do everything we can through law enforcement. We will change the way we do business if we have to reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, enhance public safety. But I can also tell you that we will never be successful as a community unless we're all involved in this. And with the issues facing today's youth, we can't be the leaders in that. We need the community to be the leaders. But you will have our leadership when we need to lead, but you'll also have us in full support as well. I look forward to the interaction and hearing some of the ideas and suggestions. And I certainly want to give you my email address. So if you have anything you want to share with the police department, praise, criticism, ideas. My email address is troy.riggs at indy.gov, troy.riggs@indy.gov, and that email comes directly to me. So send me whatever you want. I'm the only one that looks at that email and reads it. Let's not tweet that out right now. All right, Rick, we have a break. Is that, are we?
We got a couple of things before we go.
Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Captain Riddle. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate you being here and looking forward to working in partnership with you in the future.
All right, real quick, before we go to break, we actually have some refreshments and cookies, so I'm sure everybody wants to get to those. The whole point of today, at least our second part, is a question and answer session. So everybody should have gotten a question form. We have extras. I'm going to see where everybody's at. So to my right, your left, is Court.